There's been the phase in UFO sightings of just simply UFO sightings. We've had the phase of abductions by alien beings, and we've got this phase now, a sudden rash of people claiming they've seen human beings suddenly transform into reptilian life forms and small grey humanoids. And that's basically my investigation. So I'll tell you the Robert Frantz case next. My friend Malcolm Robinson there has heard about this case, first-hand contact with it. So the Robert Frantz case went roughly the following way. In February of 1992, Brian McMullen, a Glaswegian musician, came down with two other musicians. The three of those comprising Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, I think was the name of his group, the rock group. And they were supplying music for a video about a guy called Robert Frantz. Robert Frantz was known at the time as a UFO expert. He was up and coming in UFO circles. He was doing more and more lectures. And I have seen Robert Frantz lecture, but I didn't know the other thing about him. I didn't know the secret about him at the time. I just sat and watched Robert Frantz talk. And it was very interesting incidents that he was describing. He was a really interesting guy. So anyway, when they were making film of Robert Frantz, they ran out of film and on a Friday evening in February, and went off to get photographic supplies the following day from a Reading Boots, from one of the big Boots, the chemist, that has a record section, camera section, and of course the pharmaceutical sections and the photographic section, you know, about as big as ours in Edinburgh. So it was in the morning that the three of them, Robert Frantz, Clive Potter, the interviewer of Robert Frantz in the film, and Brian McMullen, the musician, just chummed along. The three of them just went along, more or less chumming Clive Potter, really, whose main responsibility was to get the film. And he, being 6 foot 1 inches, took the film first of all. Well, I'll recapitulate for the persons who just come in. I just said that what I believe is that the aliens they're landing and they're staying overnight, and they have a type of commando unit, a commando pack. And in the commando pack is a device which programs in an image of a particular human being, so that your boyfriend could be chosen by or your girlfriend or whatever, can be chosen by the alien focused on, and the image programmed into the device, so that then kills your boyfriend or whatever, and then masquerades as your boyfriend. It walks around making itself look like it is your boyfriend or whatever, or your girlfriend, you know? So you got what I mean. It can use its technology to fool your human senses into thinking you're seeing your old familiar mother or father or whatever, or any image it chooses, or the Duke of Edinburgh, or whatever. And I've just started describing the Robert Frantz case. Now, in the Robert Frantz case, they'd got the film, and Clive Potter went out the big glass doors first, pushed them open, carrying all of the photographic supplies. And Robert Frantz came up next, 5 foot 7 inches, jet black hair, and a beard, stocky build, powerful looking build, tended to wear dark clothes. And Brian McMullen, being the musician, had hung back to look at the records, came up from looking at the records, turned round, came up behind Robert Frantz, and weirdly saw Robert Frantz suddenly change into a small alien being. It was like his height dropped, and then it dropped again, and then suddenly this wee hunched figure was walking along. That's imitating Brian's Glaswegian accent. So the being looks like it was having difficulty with Earth's gravitational field strength. It was totally without any hair, very thin, very weak looking, and it was lurching badly over to the side from the waist, so that it was lurching badly like that. It brought itself up time and time again. The 4th, 5th and 6th times it brought itself vertical. The image of Robert Frantz was beginning to return and cloak the alien life form. At the sixth time, the image of Robert France all smoothed over, as Brian said, and Robert France pushed the door open, but he was looking a bit like a guy that was feeling under the weather, you know, like a flu was coming on. The back of the hand went to the forehead, like that. Brian McMullen gave Robert France a wide berth on the pavement and gave him a lot of space, you know, but didn't say anything until getting back to the flats where Robert France was staying, where he was being allowed to stay with Sheila Yeoman, whom I take it was his living lover. They did share the same bed, but she was 65 at the time this happened, on the other hand, so you might have thought the relationship was a bit strange anyway, that a handsome-looking guy in his 30s would be staying with a 65-year-old woman who's already got children. Anyway, Brian waited until they were back at the flat, or the house owned by Sheila Yeoman, and then he said something. He's a fairly irascible kind of guy, and he can bottle his feelings up and then just suddenly erupt and let know his feelings. And he said something on the order of, "Funny trickies right there, pal. Would you like to do that again in front of your women here and let her see you do that? That was a funny thing you did down at the chemist there." Sheila took a little bit of a fright at that and went out of the room on the excuse of making a pot of tea. Clive Potter said nervously, I'll come and help you." So that left Robert France and Brian McMullen confronting each other, and Brian McMullen said that left him standing thinking, those two people knew something I didn't know. They didn't bother telling me. So the Sheila Yeoman came back into the room with the pot of tea made, and Sheila and Clive decided to confess to Brian that Sheila had in fact seen Robert change into an alien as well. She was kissed goodnight on the 12th of April 1991 at 11 o'clock at night, and as Robert's face receded from hers, his face all began to transmogrify, and these huge black eyes became visible, slit for a mouth, big nose, a great big hairless head, no hair whatsoever, scaly kind of skin, and this kind of gunge was spewing from the inside of the left eye, which looked quite work out that a guy called Robert France probably had died quite some time ago. She didn't make that her opinion, maybe. So she was waking up in the middle of the night and seeing this wee grey man lying beside her instead of jet black haired, bearded, stocky, handsome Robert France and things like that. Her son, by a previous relationship, also ventured his description also of seeing Robert France change into an alien. He saw Robert France change from human to alien in 1985. This is the failing of the technology. It's failing for split seconds. The technology is not holding the illusion, not cloaking itself from our human senses. It's failing momentarily, and the alien is having to stand there and regenerate the technology somehow. When it does that, a tremendous cold temperature happens in the room. The temperature, the heat is sucked out of the room. It just goes, and it becomes terribly cold. Sheila Yeoman's son, by a previous relationship, was a bodybuilder, a body sculptor. He's a really powerful, tall guy. And when he saw Robert France change into an alien, as Robert had been standing reading passages from a Bible to Julian Yeoman and Sheila Yeoman sitting listening to him as he read passages from the Bible which he thought were related to extraterrestrial intervention. The big guy got up, Julian got up and tried to lift Robert France. He instinctively had an impulse to lift him, and he put his arm round Robert's outstretched hand with the Bible in it and tried to lift him and couldn't do it. It was absolutely rooted to the spot, as if it also had some gravitational field strength compensator, as if that also was going to be a part of the commando pack. And he couldn't move him, and he had to struggle through this force field, and the cold was absolutely dreadful, you know, totally Arctic. And then he gave up and went back to his seat. But when he drew this